Thoughts on Smurfs flooding the game? I mean, I just don't know how true it is, right? I think Smurfs in your game suffer from something called confirmation bias, meaning you tend to remember the games that you felt like there was a Smurf against you, and you do not remember the games that there wasn't one. And then oftentimes a character player who feels like a Smurf might just be having a good game. And so I'm not saying Smurfs don't exist. It's more just like I don't know if they're flooding the game, but I know it's will very often be the case that players will tell you they're flooding the game. And so it's a question of, is it perception or is it reality? And I don't know the answer. I haven't thought about that enough or looked into that enough to know. Thoughts on smurfing? I think there's a lot of types of smurfing that are very bad. Like, as an example, if you're the type of person who creates a Smurf account to dodge bans, that sucks. If you're the type of person who creates a Smurf account to just troll bad players and make them feel bad and yell at them and stuff, that also sucks. So there's things like that that I think are very real issues with smurfing. But then I also would not say that I'm in the hardcore camp of Dota, that it's like no Smurfs should ever work and you should just delete all Smurfs. Like, that's what Dota did. Like, if you Smurf, you're banned, stuff like that, right? I think there's like a number of legitimate reasons to have a Smurf that without Smurf accounts, like, we'd need to find other solutions for. The two that I would reference that I think are fairly important is, one is Smurf accounts are a very easy way to make it easier to play with your friends, which I know like some people who are listening are going to immediately be like, well, if you're better than me, you shouldn't be able to play with your friends. Like, why are you in my game? And it's like, I get that. I get that that sucks, but like, this isn't like, oh, we should enable challenger players to troll bad players. This is challenger players deserve to have friends too. If that makes sense. And so without Smurfs, you have a situation where a lot of our, especially higher ranked players, would have very, very hard times playing with their friends. And I think that legitimately sucks. And so that's something that you have to figure out a solve for. And then the other thing is sometimes like Smurfs let you play roles that you don't main, and like that's how you learn the role and that's how you play the role. So as an example, I have a Smurf and I play ranked on it in top lane. And if you've watched me play top lane on my main, you know why I should not play top lane in ranked on my main. Here, let's bring up those Jax games. I'll have you all know that this season, I am actually a 100% win rate Jax player. That's right. I'm pretty good. Check it out. Check it out. See, we got Jax right here. 100% win rate over 2 games and 1.3 KDA. I have 6 kills and 10 deaths. You don't want to know how the first 20 minutes of those games went. Anyways, and so one of the other things that's worth thinking about in terms of Smurfs is Smurfs are a way that you can like play other roles that you might want to play that you couldn't play on your main. So like, again, an example for me is I have a Smurf that I play ranked top lane on, and it's around gold or plat, and that's about how good I am at top lane is gold or plat. And sometimes I'll play mid on it as well, and it's around gold or plat, and that's about how good I am. And so it's a kind of this complicated thing of, if I was playing on my main and wanted to play a different role, I would be trolling my teammates. Now, of course, eventually I'll just have to get good at those roles, so one of the ways I could do that is to play it on my main. But given that I tend to be like in diamond when I'm actually trying hard, when I'm a support, then pulling out my gold top lane or my gold mid lane is not ideal. And so a Smurf allows for the ability to then go play that role at a more appropriate balance place. So kind of just noting, it's like, yes, there's a lot of bad outcomes from Smurfs. Yes, there's a number of people who abuse the Smurf system, and honestly, if they're abusing Smurfs, they should be banned. But I think it's a very real and important thing that players can play with their friends, and once you like get high ranked on one role, you're not just stuck there forever playing that role. Like, ideally, there's ways you can go play and enjoy other roles without legitimately like screwing your team over because you're gold at top despite being diamond at support or whatever. So anyways, yeah, it's a complicated problem, is I guess what I would say. And I don't think just delete Smurfs is the best answer. Yeah. Couldn't they just play normals to practice those off rolls? That only gets you so far. You kind of need to practice a role, you need to play ranked. Like, a lot of people think that normals are a substitute for ranked, and they really just aren't. You can learn certain things in normals, right? Like, you can learn jungle time, you can learn how to play a character. Like, there's real things you can do in normals, but normals just are... Just the way people engage with them in general is very, very different from ranked play, such that if you want to, like, legitimately practice and get good at a specific role, normals tend to not be the best place to do it. And then additionally, one of the problems is even in normals, a high-ranked player can really screw up the game if they skew a low-ranked player. And so, like, if you have, like, challenger normal MMR, you probably should not play with your low-ranked friends because they will probably have a terrible game. This happens to me, actually. I'm not challenger, but one of the problems I run into when I want to play with my silver friends, and especially about 5 years ago when I was, like, on the league grind and, like, really good at the game, is I had very high normal MMR, but I played support. And so what would happen is I would get in a game with my, like, bad friends, and the enemy team would have a diamond level jungler, and my team would have me on support. And it basically created, like, this guarantee of fairly bad times for any of the friends that I... Although, I will say something about Collector. I don't know if this is, like, relevant right now, but, like, a lot of people, like, will, like, kind of, like, they'll use Collector math to justify it being bad. Again, I don't know if it's bad or good right now. I have no clue. But sometimes I'll see people come in and they're like, yeah, Collector's bad. It doesn't even, like, get through their armor late game. And you should have just bought a Lord Dominic's Regards. And it's like, you're usually missing the context in which Collector is purchased, which is usually, like, as an early game rush in a snowball situation where that lethality is going to do work for you and cause you to murder your opponent in a very effective way. And so, yeah, is Collector good in the late game? No, it's a lethality item. It's not great in the late game. But if you get Collector early enough on Jhin, that's a lot better than a number of the other items you could potentially be getting in most metas. Again, I don't know if Collector is good right now. Maybe Collector is just weak. I have no clue. But I don't think a Collector is all just about the math, comparing it to, like, Lord Dominic's Regards. It's also about the timing that you buy it and the build path. I will say one thing that's, I think, gotten rough for Collector over the years, and other lethality items in general, is Serrated Dirk was originally designed to be a big spike. And sometime this year, we nerfed it being as big of a spike. But one of the reasons that a number of lethality items were powerful wasn't just, oh, you complete them and they're good, but it was also they built out of Serrated Dirk. And Serrated Dirk was, like, in many ways, like a sorcerer's shoes for assassins, where you'd pick up the Dirk for 1100 gold and, like, it would give you a big laning advantage. And now Serrated Dirk is no longer that spike in the same way. And that probably has had some very real impact on the ability to buy lethality items in scale. Not scale, sorry. Buy lethality items in Snowball. Whether or not that's good, that's another question. But, like, an observation that part of Collector's power over the years was the fact it built out of a Dirk. Part of lethality items in general's power were the fact they built out of Dirks. And Serrated Dirk is not what it used to be this year. And so, were Assassin's items specifically designed to be more straightforward recently? We used to get things like Prowler's Claw, the Invis variant of Dustblade. They weren't always great, but nowadays a lot of lethality items feel very similar. So if lethality items feel too similar, that's maybe something we should work on. But one of the things that was a problem with the old lethality items is things like Prowler's Claw and the Invis on Dustblade. Like, there's a limit to what you can accept for how frustrating assassins are. And one of the things we run into is that if you give assassins more tools than they already have in specific ways, it goes overboard on them being frustrating to play against. And so Duskblade Invis and Prowler's Call specifically created like some very real balance problems where it's like, no, an assassin going invisible 4 times in a fight probably isn't something that we can sustain long term without that assassin being terrible. And assassins having an extra dash to get to you when their entire fairness and game plan is really gated about whether or not they can get to you or not is also kind of messed up. And so it's not that we shouldn't do interesting effects for assassins, but there's a number of effects that if you put them on an assassin, create a character that's like significantly more frustrating on a class that's already fairly frustrating, right? And so that's the kind of the issue. And then people are like, well, what about Kha'Zix and LeBlanc? They already have that. And it's like, yeah, they have it in their kit. It's a lot different if you give something in a character's kit, because then they're like scoped around having that thing. Kha'Zix is scoped around having Invis by the fact that like his ult doesn't one-shot you, as an example, where if it's not on the